Hi, Zizaran here with another episode of Path of Exile University, and today I'm joined by Nugi. We are going to be doing a Q&A, and we have a bunch of already asked questions from the feedback forum, etc. And we will be taking live questions as well after. And thank you for joining me today, Nugi.
No problem. You're welcome.
Nice. So,
Glad to be here and all that. Yeah. Oh,
this lesson is a small Q&A session, all the most commonly asked questions, and what we got during the other lessons and stuff like that. And we're gonna start with a few handpicked ones, and we will be taking live questions later. But we're gonna open up with defenses. Why is stacking defenses so good? Why can't we just use one defense and max that one out? And honestly, this seems like a Nugi question.
because PoE is not that simple. I think it's the best way to describe it because there are just too many different things hitting you all at once, and there isn't one defense that fits them all. Even Fortify, which is like a damage reduction thing you get by hitting people in melee, which is getting a bit of a nerf now for most players. But even that, being as strong as it is, was not good enough for everything. Because, for instance, Degen doesn't work on that. But that was like the closest to an everything kind of defense we've had, I think, recently.
Yeah.
Outside of like just raw health. So yeah, basically, two things. Defense, like there's no one defense for everything. So like you get hit by different types of damages, being elemental, physical, chaos, can be projectile, spells. All of it have different like defensive layers that are the most effective against that. So you want like a good mix. The only thing I would say is a defense against everything is a health pool. So that's why you see people building such a high health pool on hardcore as like one of the first things.
Yeah. And a big reason as well is that there's multiple things that you want to defend against, right? Like, for example, just building raw amounts of armor might be good for like white monsters attacking you in a map, but maybe it won't be good enough against like the burst damage from porcupines, because the porcupines, the quill bore things, whatever they're called, that explode, they are very affected by, for example, Fizz's extra lightning, and then armor wouldn't do anything. So having a multi-layered defense, you want to try to approach like all the different things in the game, and then you would have a very different type of defense against mapping than you would against bosses.
Yes. Like mapping is very much having as much avoidance and such.
Yeah.
Or like lower levels of armor is good there as well because the hits are relatively small in comparison. In PoE, things with crit and stuff can always, go above that if there's like a golem or a bear or something like that hits you really hard. But for the most part, you can use stuff like lower amounts of block, some evasion and all that, and it'll be fine. But on a boss, where it's like a guaranteed hit, or if it hits you, you die, it's not really reliable to have those smaller amounts or to not have like a sizable hit pool to deal with it. So if you can't get out of your way, you don't want to die.
Yep. And then the next question is defenses. Is one type of defense always better than others?
Sometimes. I would say it was for a while. So they've, over the last couple of years, I would say they've kind of like every time we found another way to immune ourselves, they bunked it the league after, and it's kind of been like a whack-a-mole from GGG's part for quite a few leagues now. And I think the last one standing was Fortify, and now that kind of got the bunk. And so now, like, they lowered maximum resist down from 100 to 90, for instance, and 100 is actually immune to elemental damage. So there was like, that combo was mainly like you would reach 100% resist, and then you would convert everything into damage taken instead of physical, but as resist or as elemental damage, and you could be immune that way. And then there was the damage reduction, which was just global to everything.
If you're talking about the while leeching, yeah, that was everything.
Oh, then there's also while leeching. Yeah, that was also an everything. So people have been trying to get an everything defense, and every time they find it, it gets deleted basically by GGG because
Yeah.
they don't like that.
And some of the ones we just mentioned, they were literally immortal builds. Like
Yeah.
they take 0 damage, so you could have 1 HP and be literally immortal.
Yeah.
There's very rarely builds like that lately that slip through. And I don't think we'll see that in 3.16 either. It's generally when there's something they haven't thought of.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I would be surprised. I don't know, maybe we'll see one more, but they're a bit more rare now.
Yeah. It gets more and more complicated to get these things to work.
Yeah.
Probably a good thing.
Next question is about builds. How do you choose a build to play in a league and in racing? So it's honestly a bit of a similar concept, because for both like the first build in a league and the first build in racing, you want something that comes online fast. So if you've ever been looking for a build guide or something and it says like, oh, you need a Since Rebirth, and it just starts listing like loads uniques, and you know that these are fairly rare, even if they're like only medium rare, not like super rare ones. So let's say like a Lion Eyes or a Roomies, right? They're not like tier 1, but they are pretty expensive whenever they are used. Obviously they were nerfed recently, so it's a bad example, but ideally you want to stay away from any build where uniques are impacting you at all. And that's what makes the builds like Cold Dot, Chaos Dot, and Totem builds like really good a lot of the time, because they can go very far. Oh, and Spectral Shield Throw is a great example as well. They can go very far with just rares.
Flames.
Yeah. So then having that as a first build, and this doesn't need to be your final build. So for example, most likely in the upcoming league, I'll be recommending like Spell Stingers and Essence Drain, right? They might not end up be what you play after a week, but having something very strong, and this is especially for leagues and league starts, having something strong that you can farm currency on to then later be able to play whatever you want. Maybe something that if you're a veteran player, right, maybe something that has a 20x start budget or a 10x start budget, but that would maybe be unplayable with less than that. So just, it's very important to do that. And in racing, the number one thing is comfort. Like just something you are comfortable playing, because you might see like other people doing something that is better technically, but if you aren't experienced in it, you're going to be screwed.
Yep.
Is there anything you want to add to that?
I mean, so there's there are multiple camps on stuff like this with how do you choose. So at the end of the day, it's also a personal choice of what are your goals. Like set yourself some goals as well, and what league do you play in?
Yeah.
So some people want to be efficient. Some people want to try something new. Some people want a challenge, and some people have no idea what they're doing at all. And so, like, if you don't have any idea what you're doing, I mean, follow some people who do. If you really want to have a comfortable time, or just accept that things might fail, and that's okay. There's a lot of like, I don't want to fail. What do I do? But you know, nothing makes you a better player than failing at something a few times and then learning from it and figuring out why it happened. So yeah, like I for once, I don't always follow the train of thought of, oh, I have to be efficient and make the good build as my starter. I will try something that looks interesting and I will go with it because it's shiny and it's new.
Yep.
I think that's it's a very much a personal choice. There isn't really a right or a wrong answer. It's if you want a right or a wrong answer, you have to specify a goal first, so you can find the solution for it. Right? You want to be the fastest to 100? Well, then there's not very many builds, right, that you can do. Like last league, it was
SST.
No, maybe last league it was. Yeah, probably last league it was SST, and before that it was the Exsanguinate Explodey dude. Was that how it is? That was not last league, was it?
Yeah, Spellsinger Exsanguinate was the fastest last league.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking this league is last league.
Right. Yeah. I got myself mixed up a little
Right.
bit. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. Like in Ultimatum, it was the Spellsinger
Yeah.
fast one,
Exsanguinate.
which can't, and that's a build that can't really boss at all. It can, but it's, you really, once you get to red maps, like Guardians and anything higher, you don't want to do it. You just don't want to do it. You want to wait until you have gear for that and make a new build.
Yeah. And you will still always have exceptions like Tower Bra and people that are really comfortable or good and have really invested in it. But for the average player,
Sure.
it'll often be like you feel like the better damage a build has, it's more of a fail safe.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is about builds again. How do you evaluate for yourself if a skill's power level is sufficient for your goals, and what should a player be looking for when making their own build goals? It's a very hard one because it's at least for me and how I approach the game, it's just so like knowledge based. And I
Yes.
remember when I first started playing the game, one of the first things, the first build I played, well, the first build was Firestorm Zombies and just died. But the first build I played after that was Ice Shot with an Ice Shot Totem. And then I felt like I was starting to learn bow. I started to learn bow stats, crit stats, and I had some idea what I wanted. I wanted life, resist, I wanted crit chance, flat added cold, elemental damage with weapons. But I had no idea whenever I picked up a spell damage item, was this good or bad? And it's kind of similar here that it's based on experience and asking people in the start because PoE is such a vast game. So you really do rely a lot on crowd knowledge in a game like Path of Exile.
Yeah.
Especially because of Path of Exile doesn't have there's no easy respec. Like some other games have like free respecs until a certain point, or an easy way to, okay, well, this isn't working. And when somebody comes and be like, hey, Ziz, I'm level 50, I was trying my own build. How do I respec? Like, is there an easy way to get regressed? I'm like, no, you are fucked.
Yeah. I think I think knowledge is power here. Like if you wanna evaluate yourself, whether or not something is efficient, well then you need to know what you need. And you need to know like the relative power of whatever you're picking compared to something else. And how would you know? I mean, it's all a numbers game or an experience game. And you just kind of have to play it and know it. There's no easy way around this.
Yeah, it is literally trial and error.
I think understanding like base. So there's like some people learn by doing. Some people learn by being hands-on. Some people learn by going through video footage. Like some people are visual, audible, whatever it is. And I would say, for me, what I like to do is I like to understand like the base line mechanics of a game. So I will go in and figure out, well, how is damage calculated in general for like everything? Like where is the base damage coming from? Where is like increased damage coming from? Like how does these all like line up? And you start seeing patterns in PoE where everything is sort of the same. It's just applied differently and it functions a little bit differently in the game. But if you can see like a weapon, so a weapon can have like average damage of like 500 and it'll have like 800 increased physical damage on the tree. Well, you add those two numbers together and you get like some kind of baseline damage, and then you get like attack speed and all that, and you start figuring out, well, there's all these like multiplying layers after it. And then you'll do the same thing for the spells, and you see eventually the damage numbers end up like resulting in similar things. And you start seeing the pattern and everything starts making sense.
Yeah.
So you'll see like, okay, I need this type of weapon to be equivalent to this kind of spell at this level. Okay, I'll give similar amounts of increased damage. Okay, that gives me similar results. And then what I then need to do is go into the game and shoot out the spell to see, well, how much does it cover? How long does it take to cast it? How does it feel? And that's the thing that cannot just be read. Like you can't just look at that on a piece of paper with experience, you can start looking at trailers and see, oh, that looks like that other skill that works like that. And we know that that skill has historically been really good, so we can expect that with the numbers being equal to be good as well.
Yeah. And you also have to be, especially for bosses and boss damage. So for example, like I would say for myself as a threshold, like if I have 1 million damage on a build, I would feel comfortable for that for everything except for feared and the hidden. Then I would maybe want 2 million. But it also depends, right? Like what am I talking about when I mean 1 million? Because Path of building showing 1 million for one build can be very different for some
Yeah.
builds. Like if you have 1 million damage on Stormbrand, that is great. That is amazing damage because that damage is up all the time. But what if you're using an attack build that literally has, like, it has to be hitting to do that 1 million. So if you have 1 million damage on, let's say, Blade Flurry, that might be the same as 0.5 million on Stormbrand. So
Yeah.
the ability you choose makes a large amount of difference there as well, or on the uptime that you're going to have. And you also have to be careful when looking at build guides from people. Honestly, this is where you're going to have to like look at comments, talk to other people to find out what content creator does good guides. Because especially on the PoE forums, you will have like budget builds, but they'll be listing the stats from when they have 40x gear or 10x gear, which for a new player might be way too much. And I remember there was one YouTube creator that was like just boosting his own stuff by doing, for example, Awakener 1, but saying it was Awakener 8 and editing it out and stuff like that. So, like, yeah, be careful. Like, generally, a goal I have when making beginner guides is that they work on a 0C budget. Like, this is something you can play SSF and just find stuff off the ground. That's very important.
Like, just remember that anyone making a video is always trying to put footage in there, generally to put themselves in the best light. And there are different ways to put yourself in the best light. It could be to give you the best representation of the truth, or it could be to make them look as god player or making the best build out there, right? There's always a motive and a goal behind someone who's giving you information.
Yeah.
And it's up to you to figure out what that goal is, and whether or not you can trust the information being given. So that's on you as a player. There is a responsibility on the player if you want to have a good time, basically. Yeah. I would also say don't lie to yourself when you make builds. Don't look at a number and be like, yes, I made something great. This is going to be awesome. And then you forgot you put on, maybe one too many good pieces, or you think you're a bit too good of a player so you can have perfect mechanics and uptime. Just don't be honest. Just be honest with yourself and the expectations you have to the content you want to go against, and you're going to have such a better time.
And always underestimate things in PoB. It's a really good thing.
Yes.
Next question is again about builds. Can I make a build of my own, and how much do I need to know how to make one? I mean, that honestly depends on like what type of person you are. If you've only been like copy pasting guides and stuff like that, you're really gonna struggle. But if you're the type of person that you're gonna like read a little bit about Path of Exile every day and look things up, then you probably have a lot more information, right? Like, it's rough to make your own build, and a lot of it is understanding the tools correctly.
Yeah.
Like in Path of Building, there is, for example, heat charts, right? So we can like click show node power. It won't really do much right now because we don't have any gems set in, but in Path of Building, like it would you can have it like really show what the best nodes are for anointing, what the best nodes are for the build you're playing, etc. So it's a really good resource.
Yep. I think like you want to get like the baseline, like to make your own build, you just need to understand the fundamentals of PoE, basically.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to say to yourself, I understand the fundamentals of PoE. You need to be able to look at the tree and just realize what good patterns are. If that's not apparent to you, you either need to learn it by doing it or researching. or maybe it's just something you're not very good at in general, and you just, maybe you're just better off getting some guides. I don't know. It's like it's all depends on you, and it also depends on like how much time do you want to invest, because it takes a long time to like learn all the patterns, the fundamentals, and everything in the game, because there's so much information out there, and PoE keeps growing with skills and mechanics and all of that, and it keeps changing. So like one league, you might think one thing, and then the other league it might be a little bit different. So
Yeah.
it's tough. It's all ever changing. If you don't have your feet to the fire, and you might be lost a little bit.
Yep. Next is Hyzes. For SSF, I realized there are differences between Nugi's and your suggested Atlas passive trees. Would this be due to preference or character builds? Well, yeah, I mean, obviously each build is going to be different. And yeah, a lot of the time it is preference. Sometimes, the best example I have of this would actually be Cast on Crit back in the day. When there were, like, I don't know, I would say there was a few patches where everybody had Cast on Crit builds. And I would say, like, Assassin was quote-unquote the best, but I would have a separate tree and be Trickster because I would like reading chat more, right? So I really wouldn't care how fast I killed bosses. I just wanted to be able to map while literally staring at the chat. So I would do... Oh shit, we're talking about Atlas passives. I was just reading passives. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's preference.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think a lot of it, and it's like, where does preference come from then, right? That would be the next question. Like, how do you then get your preference? Well, it depends on your goal. Everything is like, I think a lot of it is just goal oriented. Like, if you have a build that needs certain things or that excel at certain things, you build your passives around that.
Now I'm so curious what the differences in their suggestions are.
I mean, I don't think so. I think that it's not so much about our suggestions. It's more that we actually end up taking different Atlas passives, right? So they might have like saying,
Do
okay,
we?
last year you took. Yeah, we probably do sometimes.
Okay, so in Haywark, you probably take Essences and Harvest, right?
No.
Oh. You go Ritual?
No, last time I took Ritual. And before that I've taken, what's it called? Betrayal. Like, Haywark is probably one of the most...
really? You
like
take
the
Betrayal?
most... Yeah. Because some builds need the Betrayal mods more than anything else.
Yeah, I always do
to
my
come
Betrayal
online.
in John.
And it also depends on, well, what are you doing for, like, are you racing? Are there something that unlocks your power early that you just can't be without? And so what I will do is I will just say, oh, well, my passive respec points are going here. And I'll have this for like the first like couple of weeks. I'll just have that in this area. You could look at, there's the region with Beyond in it, where you can go beyond, or you can go for like resources, right? You can go for XP, or you can go for drops.
I hate that region now. It's so bad.
Yeah, it's, well,
compared to others.
Yes. But to the question, I would say, it's all, you have to have a goal in mind to be able to make a choice.
True.
If you're on trade, if the choice is always, wealth and currency making, there might be very set choices there. However, due to that, there is also going to be a lack of someone doing something else, because everyone follows the meta on trade generally. So there will be an opportunity, if you can find it, to 100%. Go with something else.
I had a
few friends. But that requires knowledge.
Yeah, I had a few friends that went for, and that wasn't something I had recommended either, but there was one league where the breach stones had ended up being super expensive because so few people were doing it, and they were just making like 100 exalt a day or something, just spamming breach. I was like, wow.
Yep.
Amazing.
You want to figure out what people are not doing and do that if you're trading.
Yep. So next question is, guides talk about utility skills. What do these mean? That would just be things like Temper Shield, Flame Dash, like a movement skill, and steal skills, like things that aren't like doing damage. They're just like helping you in some way, either giving you a boost, etc.
I mean, so we have damage skills, and then we have movement skills, and then we utility.
Sure,
so if it doesn't move you, if it doesn't do damage, it's pretty much utility.
I think a lot of people would take movement skills under utility too.
You think so?
I think so.
I wouldn't.
Oh, and yeah, stuff like Stormbrand to trigger Elemental Overload.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that. I'd say it depends on who's saying it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, people will do different things under it. War cries too.
Because there isn't anything in the game classified as utility.
Yeah.
It's like guard skill, movement skill, active skill, passive skill.
Yeah. Void Sphere. Yeah, I honestly, if you're thinking literally just utility, there are very few things that go under there.
Yeah.
It's like Void Sphere and Tempest Shield, and Tempest Shield is being changed next league. But I think a lot.
It's very good to look into though, because there's many good. Like Void Sphere is very good. Like having Vortex on a left click for chill is very good. I mean, there's a lot of like good stuff in there you can do.
Having Vortex
to add to your builds.
It's just like a chill mechanic, or Castle Damage taking Cold Snap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Castle Damage taking Portal to get rid of your friends from the map. Okay. Next up, we have gearing. What affixes are the most important in gear for certain builds? I'm a little lost as to what would be a big upgrade on certain gear, especially for damage, and how to get that upgrade. You guys are amazing and full of incredibly important info, but because I'm inexperienced, I really struggle to make the push into red maps to get the endgame influence gear, even though my gear looks similar to your mid-game gear. I'm playing SSF, by the way, and I like the idea of farming, crafting my own gear, and I'm hoping it helps me to learn the game better. Yeah, I'm trying to think what's the best way to figure out the most important affixes. I mean, playing around with it in Path of Building is obviously going to be the best way. Like, if you have the patience to do it, literally try to like make a list of every single piece of gear that affects your build. So that involves a lot of looking at tags. So for example, Ancestral Warchief, right, would have like area of effect, physical, totem. Look at the tags and then try to like look through like weapon affixes, jewel affixes, and compare them in Path of Building and see if anyone make a difference. Like, for example, if you're playing Essence Drain, right, chaos damage over time multiplier will give you a lot more damage than just increased damage over time. And then you want to like try to figure out which ones those are. And then you'll also notice like increased damage over time and spell damage will be the same, like 1-to-1, right? So you want to try to like learn that for your build very quickly. What does the biggest difference? Does flat physical affect my build? Does elemental damage? Like, figure that out. Make a big list and try to compare it, because that's, yeah. And ideally you want guides to list that as well.
I think a good example here would be like, let's look at crit chance, for instance, and crit multi. Because one would think if you're a crit build that you just want to get as much of it everywhere, right? But that's not really, it's yes and no. So you need to figure out what item generates the best stat for what you want.
Yep.
For instance, crit chance, spell crit chance, or anything like that. You never really want to put it on rings and amulets. Like, it's okay as like a 5th or a 6th stat to like have it on there as like, well, whatever, I guess I got it. But when you look at like a diamond ring, for instance, being the base of like 30 up to 30, and you compare it to a vermilion ring, which is 7% life, and then you look at like the passive tree, where 7 is one of the best, like it would be a very, very attractive node, and 30 crit chance is like, well, that's a lead up to a better node, and you're like, maybe the life is better on this slot. And then you look at like spell crit on weapons and shields, and you see, whoa, they go up to 110.
Yeah.
And I get like 30 on an amulet, but crit multi is the same. Well, then you put the crit multi on the amulet, and you put the spell crit on the weapon, and you take more crit chance on the tree. Maybe you, instead of trying to get crit chance on the ring, you get power charges, because they get, is it 40 each now? So there's like, you need to like figure out basically the amount of a stat you can get on all the pieces that you have for the stats that you need overall, right? So it's all, again, it's just knowledge is power again, and you just need to go through the affix list of like all the individual pieces and start putting it's a puzzle. Put together the puzzle.
And another quick example of all the things Nugi said, like for example, crit chance on jewels, right? Sometimes you'll get a jewel with like double crit multi, but then also crit chance, and you might be like, "Wow, this is so good," but the crit chance on jewel is so low. You can get 15 crit multi, but also 15 crit chance, and seeing as it's so easy to get crit chance, it's kind of wasted.
Yeah.
Okay, another question. You use the word leapfrog crafting on your gear in SSF. Does that mean crafting in some way? Does it make crafting better gear easier? I think the only time I've used leapfrog crafting has been with linking. Well, actually, no, I guess I have used it with crafting too. So when I use that, it makes, so in the terms of linking, it would be that I will have 2 of the same item, right? Like a Cloak of Flames or Chevron's Wrappings, and I'll 5-link one and then work on 6-linking another. Or, um, I will be very, very careful with how I craft if I only have one. Like if I have, say, 2 very similar items, right? So that if I say the choice is to whether I null an item or not, like 30% damage over time multiplier gloves. If I have 2, then I would maybe risk annulling and trying to really craft one and perfect it. But if I only have one and the choice is, okay, I null this and then I have to go down to regular life gloves, then I would be a lot more cautious. So being able to leapfrog your gear and have backup options like that is very, very important. Next is, when is a unique item better than a rare item? Can I just swap them easily if I have a lot of uniques now? So
I mean, if they're better stats.
yeah. So I don't know. Uniques in PoE isn't really like uniques in a lot of games. Like there are some games where uniques are just better in every way. In Path of
Yes.
Exile, rares are generally the best items, pretty much always. There are some like stats that only exist on unique items, and we usually call these build enabling items because they that's the only place you can get them. So I don't know. Generally, I very rarely use uniques unless they're just better.
PoE doesn't work with it isn't like a tiered system where first you get magic, then you get rare, then you get unique, and then you get legendary or ancient. Like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Like it go. I mean, generally, yes, a rare is better than a blue, is better than a white, because you don't get more of a stat by being on a blue like you do in some games. It's the same stat, you just have more stats. So basically, on any like crafted item, like normal one, like white, blue, yellow, it goes up to 6 stats total. And that's that. That's a normal item, and then you can either have influence or not influence on it. Is there anything else you could have on there? I think that's about it. And then there are some unique mods, yeah, like synthesis and delve and incursion, which have some extra like special mods, but it doesn't change that much. Corruptions is like another thing, but it's like risking your item to get something on there. It doesn't really matter too much here in this because you can get that on unique items as well. So that doesn't make them distinct. And then uniques just have a set of mods on there that they're just unique, right? They're specific to that one item, and you just have to weigh, well, are these stats better than you have on the rare? Yes or no. It's not always the case. It's like, I mean, a Calm's heart, 500 life, can't get that on a chest, but then you don't have sockets, and you just kind of have to see, like, okay, what do I value more?
Yep.
Like PoE is kind of special in this regard, where unique items are quite actually, like, they are unique. They kind of differ from the main recipe, and you have to figure out whether or not it fits your build.
Yep. Next is, you mentioned stacking minus resist to enemies with helmet stats and elemental penetration, and are these the same thing? And if not, what's the difference? So there are 3 different things that affect this. So you have things like nearby enemies have negative resistances, you have penetration, and you have exposure. Exposure you can only have one source of. So, for example, you could get minus 25 or 50% exposure, but you can't get like 20 exposure on your helmet, 20 exposure on your left sock, and 40 exposure on your right sock, right? that doesn't work. There is no different sources of exposure. However, you can get a lot of elemental pen. Like you could have like 30 pen from a ring. It's, I can't even remember what sources. You could have like 50 pen from a gem, and then like pen on a weapon.
Yes.
And then you can also have minus resists on helmet stats. I'm trying to remember. Is there like a damage difference between negative resist and pen? I guess there would be.
Okay, so the way that works is that pen looks at their maximum resist only, and it'll basically go. So if an enemy has 150 total resist, meaning that they will have 75 over the cap, right? Because they're also capped at 75 like we are. So an enemy will be at 75 resist max. Pen will start from 75 and go down. Curses and the helmet like nearby enemies have reduced, and stuff like exposure, old EE, and all that stacking, right? They were not pen. So they would have to remove the 75 first before they go down to the max res, and then from there on out you would shred all the way down to 0 and then beyond.
Yeah.
But if you've reached the 75, they stack and they're even from this point on.
Yep.
So what I would say is, if you're mapping and you have like EE on the map, monster resist on the map, the monster is already resistant, and you put a curse on there, it might actually have no effect, because it's not shredding it down to the baseline 75, and the only thing that actually has an effect there would be your pen.
Yep.
So that's why sometimes you'll feel like, oh, I'm cursing, I'm doing all these things, but they're not dying faster, and it's a really slow map. And it's because they're just like, a rare can just have way too much resist for that part of your damage to have any effect. It's also why, and I think this is relevant for the next league, elemental dot builds might struggle a lot here, because EE is no longer there and you don't have pen. So it's like you don't have the ways, because like resist will not be enough to bring it down below 75. Or like a curse will not be enough to bring it down below 75, whereas a curse plus EE would. And it's important to know that if a monster has 75 res, they're only taking a quarter of the full damage. But if you reduced their damage below 0 to minus 75, it would only be 75% more damage, right? Which is not even double, versus only doing a quarter. So like getting down to 0 is so important, and rares can have double stacking like elemental auras or like resistances. So they can be way above 75, meaning that you will never even reach their cap.
Yep.
So just know that if you get frustrated, like that your mapping build might feel a little bit slow, but it's like good on the bosses or good on like white maps, and then all of a sudden you just hit a wall. That would probably be it.
And then we have Inquisitor as well that just ignores resist. That means that anything you do with penetration, anything you do with minus max resist or minus resist, does nothing
For hits.
Inquisitor. Yeah. Next question is a gameplay question. I noticed most high-end players are running in a circle around the mobs when fighting bosses. Can I not just stand still and nuke the boss? If you're a standard player, I guess in theory you could use that. So Path of Exile, a lot of things are very telegraphed, and currently there is, to the best of my knowledge, only one thing in the game that tracks the player, and that is Hail Rake. I don't think anything else actually tracks and tries to predict where the player goes. You can literally
yes,
only think of Hail Rake. And I think there will be more of that, especially in PoE 2. But currently, if you are just running in a circle, the monster will always target where you were. They clearly want to change this, right? That's why Hail Rake already has tracking. So Hail Rake will actually try to account for where you're going, but nothing in the game does that. Everything else is either following after you or targeting your past location. So just running in a circle on bosses, on monsters, everything, very, very safe. The Glacier attack from the medicine chest does that. He's called Hail Rake.
Brutus will actually do it as well. It's why you see him doing like he'll do like 180s and all sorts. I don't know if it's the exact same tech, but
I
he
think I
is
haven't
very
noticed that.
different. Like the slam, like you cannot I don't know if you like if it's the same follow like the prediction tech, but he is very different now. Cause it almost feels bugged. Cause you'll like run around the circle and all of a sudden he will 180 snap, blind the attack right on you. So
But that's just
yeah.
the first hit, I think.
No. Third
Oh.
hit. This
Pretty sure that's also a visual thing. So I know what you're talking about.
yes, but this happened only after they did the tech for the
Right.
So there, it might not be exactly the same. It might be bugged. I don't know, but he does weird things right now. So I would say be very cautious of Brutus with thinking that you can just run around the circle.
Sure. I don't know. I still run around. I
I
always have
mean, it
decoy.
does seem to work, but sometimes he just does weird things now. I
Right.
don't know why.
But either way, at least currently for the most of the content in the game, running in a circle and more importantly, never ever for any reason backtracking is a very,
Yes.
very good source of defense. You'll see so many racers do backtracking on a boss fight and die because of it. So if
Yes.
you're able to consistently move, and even if you're like, I'm gonna flashbang everyone with paint real quick. Um, like running like this is really good. And then whatever you do, don't run like back this. If you have to run a different direction, you could run like this or you could run like that. Just whatever you do, don't backtrack. That's like the very, very important thing because that is when that is how you die in Path of Exile.
Yeah. Also, you die to totems.
Yes. Oh, actually,
So,
yes.
like,
Nugi brought up a really, really good point there. Totems, summons, or golems or Herald of Purity monsters can also kill you by things like that.
Yeah.
Because like I've actually died to that fairly recently where I was doing Harvest, and one of the like tier 3 bears in Harvest was targeting my Herald of Purity monster and did a big slam. I
Yeah.
didn't even know the animation was underway. I got on the screen and the slam finishes. It's almost screen wide, and I got one shot, and I was like, oh, okay. So that's part of the reason why I will, if a build doesn't really need summons, I will always like, I will never use a golem just for the golem buff. I'll only use golems if it's either really, really important, like I'm not accuracy capped, or I really badly need cast speed, or I will use a golem for when I already have minions. And yeah, chain maps.
Yeah.
So,
Like, there's a lot of content where I will just take off, like something like Herald of Purity, for instance, going into a fight, because I know it's going to just cause more problems that it's going to solve.
yeah. Let's see. Next question is, are flasks as important as guides keep telling everyone, or can I do these new orbs to make them automated? Honestly, on softcore, yes, you can make them automated. The last patch genuinely did make them a lot less important. Flasks were so strong before when you had like Quartz, Granite, and Jade giving the phasing and dodge. It would give you 3,000 armor and 3,000 evasion. Plus, you could make them give even more with the up to 100% evasion or armor. They would literally be all the defense you need for mapping. They would take care of all the mapping defense you would need. They no longer do. They're nerfed by more than half because not only is they the 1.5k base now, but the percentage is lower as well. So yes, you can definitely like have them automated, especially on softcore. I've never put them automated on hardcore because I want to make sure that I use them when I want to. So on hardcore, you have a lot less freedom there, but still, flasks are very, very important. You definitely want to use them. You don't want to have like 3 life flasks, a mana flask, and a quicksilver. Utility flasks are incredibly strong.
I think that in terms of like, can you just automate all of them? Don't have it as your goal to just. I mean, you can have it so that you want a build that just automates everything, and that's the purpose of the build, for it to play the best with that. But not every build should just automate every flask, even if you're like just because it's there's a lot of things to be lazy with in PoE, and you just need to figure out where the right place to be lazy is.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's your flask, sometimes it's not. So don't you might be shooting yourself in the foot by insisting on the automation of the flask just because you can. Right? Clicking a button like every now and then is not the worst thing in the world. It really isn't. There might be another thing you can automate, maybe on your skills, cast and damage taken, maybe, or maybe there's like another small, very little damage buff you might not need that you're like really trying to min max, but then you don't want to do it with your flask. It's like, come on.
Yep. Next up is, do you change loot filters often and why? I'm pretty lazy with loot filters. I also personally, and especially for SSF, like having a very light loot filter that actually shows a lot. Because regardless of if I'm picking up nearly everything in the map, I like picking up at the end of the map, having a full inventory of rares so that I can get a lot of alterations, because I can't just go buy them, right? So I will generally show a large amount. I'll show a large amount of bases as well, like item level 84, 78, 86, etc., especially in the first month of the league, and make sure I have everything that my characters need for crafting. I would say I would have like 4 different filters that I make myself and choose. And it's basically, the first one would show everything pretty much. The second one that I start using in like yellow maps maybe will start hiding the worst and the second worst bases of rares, and then I still have a lot of rares showing. Then I would, around red maps, start showing only the second best and the best tier of rares. And then I have like an endgame filter once I'm done finding bases and I only care about influence gear. What about you?
I am pretty much the same, but I think you should change more. You should change. Everyone, there's very few people who utilize the loot filter well, in my opinion. Because I think it's like oh, I could change my filter right now. I'll just play some more. But if you actually did a few tweaks, so it's like, oh, this item shouldn't show, these things shouldn't show, so it doesn't clutter your thing, or that there's like a few specific things you're looking for right now that you just would like, that could like take you to the next step in your build a little bit faster, well, you should do that. Like so many times I find myself, oh, I'm really looking for that thing. Oh, why won't it drop fast enough? Well, maybe I should just make an actual bonk, like a big bing sound, so I know exactly if it drops off screen as well, so I don't miss it. So I think there is generally a lot that people miss, and they miss out of by not adapting their loot filter to their current play. And I am definitely one of them. Every time I start tinkering with filters, everything starts flowing faster. I start doing my objectives, what I'm looking for, faster. Everything just starts being better. If I do like a daily, like I'll have like in the morning, I'll be like, what do I need today? That, and that. Okay, let me just quickly adjust the filter before I start. Go. And that helps a lot. Rather than just sitting there staring at the same rares again and again and again that I'm never going to pick up.
I think a very big part of that too is that it's a third party thing and people don't like going out of the game and doing something. If it was in game, it would be a lot easier and a lot better.
I mean, because I'm the same. I don't go out. I don't want to like tab out and go onto the site and figure it out and then download it and put it into the folder. Right? It doesn't take that long, but it's just like there's so many steps to it that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
True. All right. Next up is gameplay. What are the biggest noob traps in the game you can fall into? Not reading. Like sometimes you'll see people doing like avatar fire with chaos damage, like at Serious Promise. Not balancing your build. Following builds by bad creators that do like clickbait numbers, like 40 million damage budget build, and it's not. Going on Reddit.
I don't know. It's a hard one. What's the biggest noob traps in the game? I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps, right? I think the biggest noob trap in the game is probably like, I don't know, it's a hard one. What's the biggest noob trap in the game? I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so many traps. I mean, it's difficult because there's so I don't know.
Yeah, it's a hard one. More versus increased. True. More versus increased. Not like realizing how big the difference is.
Yeah.
Just getting damaged, not like not having a balanced build. Picking up too many things, like hoarding. Like, I remember when I was new at the game, I had a red, green, and a blue gem tab for active gems, and a separate red, green, and a blue tab for support gems. And I would hoard like absolutely useless items and be like, well, if I get mugged, robbed, and somehow all my items that I am using and the second set of items that I am using all get deleted, then this one would be really good.
There was in 9 years ago, the gem tab wasn't the worst thing in the world, especially if you rerolled a lot and you're on hardcore.
Yeah.
And especially if you were one of the first people to maps, because the thing is, you needed to have a high level character of a certain class to get a certain gem.
Yeah.
And if you're like ahead of the curve, you didn't actually always have that available, so you'd buy extra to just have them ready for when you died.
True.
But beyond that, the 9 years ago meta, yeah, I agree.
That's the main ones.
Yeah.
What is your biggest gameplay pet peeve and how do you play around it?
My biggest gameplay pet peeve is the amount of shit that drops on the ground. Probably.
Yeah, probably.
I think that's the worst one. And the way I play around it, I just say fuck it. And I just stop picking things up. Even though I know it's worth my time.
Drops is probably the worst.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think what is my biggest pet peeve? Shield charge, yeah, shield charge feels awful.
Yeah. Like movement skills in general. Yeah. Okay, movement skills. The way to play around some of the not so good movement skills is just build movement speed instead.
Yeah, true. Currency
Right,
pickup?
that's
No, I like
another
that.
one.
Yeah, I don't know. There's not like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about pet peeves. Oh, actually, pickup radius. I honestly do wish we had like an extra meter pickup radius.
I've really tried to advocate this. I've done my very hardest, but yeah, it doesn't seem like it's happening.
Main ones. What has been the hardest or most memorable fight for you in the game for mechanical slide? Like when you got the first time kill? For me, Shaper. Because I got the first one with blue. So that was for me the most memorable kill. I was literally shaking so hard I thought it was going to pass out. I would say most boss fights are very exciting the first time, but yeah, Shaper.
I think Ubrelda was mine. That's crazy. On my Molten Strike, 100% cold rest with Carlton Halt. That was cool.
I remember that. You had a very smooth first kill.
Yeah! I nearly leaped through 3 balls. I just barely like grazed them on the side and they didn't hit me. Other than that, it was decent, but I don't know. I still had no idea how to put the puddles down. You guys were you and Dan were way better at doing that. You had the timing down.
Yeah, I think I had a fairly smooth brother kill after watching Dan do it.
Well, after losing 8 CIRFers.
No. That was to Elder. I never died to a brother.
No, yeah. Well, the journey there counts.
I guess. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like my Uber Elder was always very smooth. It was just Elder. It was very rough.
Yeah.
And I also just had a bad build for it and not enough regen.
Yeah. And once you went live, it went a lot better.
True. Right. We have some time for questions. Ads are actually going to start in 7 minutes, no matter what I do. So let's fire off some quick questions. Any questions about anything?
Putting people on the spot there, sis. Didn't even give them some grace period there.
I've clicked
Why are
postpone
all
3
the
times.
D2 servers down? It's a good question.
That is a good
I
question.
wish I had the answer.
I found so many runes, or actually I found low. But that is so many. Do you think defense will be in a better spot for 3.16 based on the manifesto? Yeah, I actually do.
Yes, I do. I think they're doing good strides towards a better game state. So, I mean, we could give it, we could both give our take on it. I think, to me, what it looks like is that they're taking a lot of the volatility out of it and adding more like just like raw mitigation. Like since we lost like max stress and all that. Now, like the thing they're doing with spells is a spell dodge will feel a lot better, right? If you get to the cap of 50, you can take the hit now rather than hoping that you're gonna dodge it. Like if let's say that you get hit by, or let's say that Shaper Balls have a chance to kill you, right? But if you dodge it, it doesn't kill you. So it's like a 1 and 2 will kill you. But if you had 50% damage mitigation, well, neither of those will ever kill you. You will only die ever if you get hit by both. And so now you feel like you have a lot more control, right? By having that kind of mitigation. And they're layering a lot more, or they're airing a lot more in the way of, we'll give you reductions rather than the 100% avoidance, which will make just gameplay feel a lot better, because it's how I think softcore players will realize how much better the game feels when things don't one-shot you. To the same degree. Obviously, you won't have as much total EHP when you're delving.
Yeah.
Because it's like an on or off thing down there anyways, so that might feel worse. You might not be able to delve as deep, but for everything else, it'll feel better, I think.
Yeah, I pretty much, I don't really have anything to add to that. I agree. Hebo asked, as someone who has not played in a few leagues and is looking to get back in, what would you recommend to not feel overburdened? Well, that's the thing about Path of Exile, right? There's not really much that you have to do. There's nothing wrong with like finding blight things and either like barely interacting with it or not interacting with it at all and be like, you know what, I'm going to take a step back from this. I don't know what this mechanic is. I don't need to interact with that right now. Obviously, you are going to have like the fear of missing out. Like, okay, what if I could have gotten something worth 10 exalts? But again, it's Path of Exile, right? There's always going to be something. So take it a little bit one step at a time, or you can ask people if you really, really do want to. Honestly, the best thing would be asking, like, what are the no skips? Actually, I should make a video on that. I should make a video on, like, mechanics not to skip. Because that is important. Like, for example, like, if... Are they putting Ultimatum back in? No, they're not, right? Well, let's say that Ultimatum was there, right? There would be nothing wrong with skipping that. Yeah, maybe.
We don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, like Metamorph, for example, is the easy one you can skip. Hey, Metamorph.
I think PoE, so for the skip, no skip, there's always something to use your time on, and it's perfectly fine to just, if you found something that's profitable, just do it. Keep doing that.
Yep.
You can skip everything else. If you're actually seeing your chaos count go up by a crazy amount, you're basically doing it right.
Yep. True. As a casual player...
Don't start doing the blights if you hate them. You can skip all of them. And then the thing is, if you're on trade, if you're making good currency, you can just buy everything else you need.
True. It's very different how you approach it in SSF or Trade League.
Yeah. Trade League needs a lot of, like, forethought, needs a lot of planning, because you might need the oils later. So that's, you can't really, well, on low level maps you should skip blights, in my opinion. In red maps you shouldn't.
I skip until like tier 8s.
Yeah, I skip a little later because I hate blight.
Yeah. As a casual player, I find the more stuff they add to the game, the harder it is for me to get regular crafting mods. Do you find this in SSF or Uber in game too? I mean, like I said, for SSF especially, like, or like Nugi said, you have to plan, right? So I try to make sure I generally like league starting with having the invasion notable and spamming that. So I get a bunch of 6 things, I get a bunch of raw currency, and then I'll move on to something else. Maybe I'll do heist or blight or something for raw currency. But no, I will try to account for that. But if you don't know what to farm for that, then yeah, it's hard. To briefly explain to chat that you can just choose a couple ways to farm and still get anything if you're not SSF. Yeah, exactly, right? Like Nugi said that as well. You can just buy things. You can just buy things. You just need to make money. SSF is obviously very different.
Like that's what it. I think once people like, I think for new players, once they realize that in an economy, that basically the only thing that will ever hold them back is the amount of currency they can make per hour, will make a big difference. I really think so, because like any chaos is a base. Look at a chaos orb as a fragment of something else. And then all of a sudden, you'll see that it's just a timer that ticks up to anything you like in the game, even a headhunter. Like one chaos will be, I don't know, like 1/40,000th of a headhunter. So every time you pick one up, well, 1/40,000th of a headhunter. One more, one more, right?
Yep. Would forcing myself to play SSF for one league be good to learn more about the game? If you are not gonna quit the game, then yeah. Like if you
Sure.
are, and if it ends up forcing you to research more, look things up, then yeah, that's the important part. You need to look things up to learn about Path of Exile for sure. Let's see. Any more questions? Do you think we'll have Uber heist? I hope we just get more Uber content. I think it's really, really good to have aspirational content and things that like you necessarily can't do at the start, but you can look forward to. At least for me and the way I approach games become boring and lose their charm when I've done everything and when I can do everything easily. Best way to craft items for multi-mod? Alt regal usually. Do you think removing more elite content is the correct way to go? Yes.
Wait, what was the question?
Do you think removing more elite content is the correct way to go?
Yeah. What's the ad? Now?
Yeah.
Do we have ads?
We do. Can't stop them.
Well, just chit chat then until people are back.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay.
What would you like to see go?
Metamorph?
That's the next thing. Metamorph? Really?
And I really want Ultimatum not to make a return.
Why do you want Metamorph to go?
I hate it. It's the least balanced content in Path of Exile ever. I've never seen such bad balance. Ever.
It is really awkward, honestly. Because like sometimes it'll be super easy, and then all of a sudden it'll just do
there's
bazillion
no
damage.
Indication of what breaks the game. There's sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Sometimes you will take two mods, and it's like playing ability draft in Dota, where the monster is just Keck W. I just one-shot 3 players. They didn't know.
I think the problem is because the inherent rare monster stats. And so you can't, I'm not even sure if you can see all of the stuff they inherit properly. Like there isn't like a number. It'll just be like, because like that depends on what monster you killed on the map, right? And so it gets mods from the rare monster. And it's just super, you can't even see the auras, right?
Yep. And there's so many bugs. Scuffed. I can't remember if they fixed either of them, but at least prophecy monsters, if you get a prophecy monster that's also a metamorph, that gets like 6,000% more damage and just auto one-hits you. I think they might have fixed the bestiary bug, but it used to be the same thing there as well, that if it's a bestiary metamorph and it uses a bestiary ability, that gets like 6,000% more damage, and you're like, bro, like how could this be in the game for so long? I actually don't think it's been fixed. Yeah. Yeah. Like Karatha died to that with a perfect like defense build in like 0.1 second. So
didn't you die to that?
Yeah. And I died to prophecy. Yeah.
Silly.
Yeah, I died to that too. And I died to I had the Unbreathing Queen prophecy monsters, and one of them got a metamorph. And because it was the level 5 quest. So I was like, okay, cool, that should be fine, right? And it was like an ice storm that like one hit me on 12k ES. And I was like, awesome. So it's like all the damage numbers are completely off for those.
Yeah.
I would definitely want Metamorph nerfed. I've never seen anything more broken. I think they're removing Prophecy, they said, right?
Yes. Well, they are removing it, like, so they are redoing the mechanic, I think. Like, they still want Prophecy to be in the game. But
Yeah.
a league mechanic itself, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Also, ads are over now. That's good. We have another question
nice.
by Jackness. It said, I don't like playing new things. I really like playing ED, but when I tried it this league, it felt unplayable, like it was impossible to get more damage, so I just stopped playing. Is it my fault as a player for failing to adapt, or is some stuff just permanently bad now? So, I would say Essence Drain hasn't been in an amazing spot the last 2 or 3 leagues. I think it's been in a good league starter spot, and I would say it's a very balanced build, similar to Spectral Shield Throw Bleed is slightly stronger, but still fairly balanced in the sense that you can't really get much more than 2 or 3 million damage without going crazy ham on investing, but it's a really good league starter in the sense that it comes online fast and it can do tier 16s very quickly. It's not really your fault. Like, the game will always just be rotating what is really strong or not.
I think...
Good news, though. ED is going to be probably one of the most meta builds this league.
Will it?
Oh, yeah. Unless there's something in the Passionates that says Essence Drain or Spell Slinger, both starting a Slinger and then going into actual self-cast ED should be busted this league. Because all the dot changes affects ED more than anything else. We're getting an extra 30 multi on rings. We're getting an extra 40 multi on a weapon.
Rings? Was it 15-15?
Yeah, 15-15. Good.
So... Yeah, so hitting the damage threshold will be easier now.
Yeah. And Slinger, you can with no reservation have a 6-link 4-link Slinger now.
I think physical dot will be busted.
Oh yeah.
More than chaos, by the way.
Maybe.
It's because of the reservation changes. I think physical dots scale better with having more auras than ED does in chaos.
Yeah,
and the new reservation changes are not. Like, you take one cluster, they're more than twice as effective as before, right?
Yeah.
Or they're twice as effective.
I
think that would be nuts.
Sure, I think that's true as well, but especially for hardcore, like, you can now run... So Trickster now gets 10 ascendancy points. It loses 9% damage reduction, but, like, they're gonna replace the one they put on the skill tree with something. So as long as that has any useful stats, we still take Ghost Dance, or whatever it's called, and no other ascendancy can really use it, because Trickster is the only one that gets ES from Evasion. So...
Wait, what?
Like, you're not going to use Ghost Dance on a Cultist. You're not going to get enough evasion to make it good. But on the Trickster, you still get, like, you're still going to use the Sadist Garb unless they rework that node too, which I hope they don't. But it should be really, really strong. And you can now run Grace, Discipline, and Malevolence very easily. You couldn't do that before. So that's why ED is so much stronger too.
True.
You can run Malevolence now.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you're so much tankier too. Like, normally I would run like Discipline and Skitterbots because I was struggling on mana. But now I can run Discipline, Grace, and Malevolence. So I'll get shit tons of ES back per hit. I don't know. And block is still really strong.
I think like so many rangers will run what's it called? The ghost, whatever it's called. Is it Ghost Dance? The one that gives you charges?
Oh, yeah.
The one that they split? Yeah. Because, like, on a raider, why wouldn't you? You don't have the pet, like, you don't really go aggro anymore, right? Because that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, aggro turns spell dodge into, or spell suppression into spell dodge.
Right, but you can probably get spell suppression without. Oh, like, so you want, right. You think that's going to be worth it, though? I don't know. Why not just, because the thing is, if you get 75% spell dodge versus that requires...
Well, you do that to protect the shrouds. So you don't want to get hit at all.
True. Okay, I can see that. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, from spells? Sure.
Yeah. Spell suppression would be more for, like, things that aren't getting hit a lot.
Well, by spells.
Yeah. I don't
But
know.
then you can have that on top of the other anyways.
But either way, it will be really, really
Yeah.
interesting. I think it'll be a really interesting league. And I don't know. I think both or like elemental damage over time gets kind of screwed compared to Fizz and Chaos at least. Like it seems
Yes.
weaker than both.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I think I would be cautious doing elemental damage over time.
Yeah.
And it's especially because of EE. I think I wouldn't underestimate the loss of EE for mapping content mostly. I think for bossing, it might actually be better to not have it.
Coldot
The
might still be really
EEO.
strong. But
Yes.
it's the thing is like the other ones are getting buffed. Coldot is probably gonna stay very similar to where it is. I've been like following the Coldot community talking about it, and they've been like panicking, trying to figure it out. And there's been some tweets this morning where they're like mostly figured out a lot of the problems. But again, it's like staying around the same power as now, which isn't terrible.
Yes.
But
It's gonna feel a lot more yeah, it's gonna the range of your pleasure in maps will feel way different now. So you will go from being an absolute god to feeling like nothing dies.
yeah,
That's how maps are gonna feel. Because depending on how much resist they have and whether or not you can shred it, you know, you might that beyond map or whatever that has like double resist that we were talking about earlier, you know, it'll feel like as if you're playing you're fighting like Series 20 all of a sudden in a map. And then you go to the boss and it's just like, oh, he disappeared.
Yep.
Okay. Weird.
What about the Chaos Dot community? I'm excited. Ah, I don't know. It'll be a good league. And also, we don't know. Have they haven't said anything if they're doing new skills or not, have they? I can't remember.
I would guess that they're doing a couple of new skills. I wouldn't expect too much.
Yeah. Maybe more Chaos skills. More Fizz skills.
Oof.
You saw one in the teaser? Did we? I didn't pay attention to that. Yes, new party support skills. That
Oh, true.
basically doesn't exist for me. That's not a new skill.
Maybe they're gonna buff some aura skills, like the height stuff.
Right. Yeah. Honestly, that's what I hope the most. I saw an upvoted a thread on that on Reddit where it was like, well, now that you've nerfed like aura stackers and stuff, can we get our heist gems back?
Yeah, I would love that.
In the interview with Chris and stuff, that was the main thing that I said. Like, why I was so upset about aura stackers, because that felt like the only reason why the heist gems got nerfed. So, hopefully they remember. Can you explain what you meant by no restoration 6-link 4-link ED contagion slinger? Oh, so with level 20 spell slinger now, you can run a 6-link soul rend 4-link essence drain with like, I think it's like 10% mana restoration or something. It's so little. Like, it's so easy to run now because of the new restoration changes. It's just so easy. Whereas before it was much harder, and like you ideally at some point want to run 6-link soul rend 4-link ED plus have mana over to cast them, and some people like having a contagion, and that was a large investment before, and now it's like half as easy. So it's a lot better now. A lot better. And yes, VD Slinger should be a thing now.
Just in general, all slingers that were very good before and very meta will be closer to that again, if not just meta.
Yeah.
Like anything you can think of.
Yep. Pretty much. Do you think the Atlas changes will significantly shorten the time to end game? Yeah, for sure. Removing that many maps, but still, like, it seems like they still want to keep the power or what we get around the same. I think it'll shorten it. That's like where I have a bit of an unpopular opinion, because I am a no-lifer, so them just adding things to the game and stuff, I like that. I was really looking forward to the time where we would get to 200 maps on the Atlas or 300 maps on the Atlas, and now I know that isn't happening, so I'm very sad about that. But I realize that's a good thing for the game.
You really want that many maps on the Atlas?
I love it, yeah. Like
What
the
if they, but they
more.
don't like, but what if they don't add anything? If they just, I don't know, it's more meat.
Yeah. You said yourself that you don't do new maps, or was it Steel? No, I don't do the new maps because DDD decided that like what's the Water Awakener map called? Like
The Water
that's
Awakener
just
map.
because there's like some of the new bosses just have like Awakener tier fights out of nowhere that just like comes out and
Oh,
RKO you, and then there's that like the
not stagnation.
stagnation,
No,
right? You're
stagnation
doing
is that's the mud one.
Oh, Forking River then, right?
Fucking river.
You're a new player, right? You're mapping and you do a beach. You do a beach and you're fighting Hailrake, you kill it. Then you open up Forking River, fucking suddenly Awakener comes out. It's John Cena! Boom! Do, 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 and you're dead. And you're like, well, that was a different experience than the last map. And they dropped the same. And like Foundry and stuff like that, Bramble Valley, there's no balance pass on difficulty to drop rate, and I hate it so much. It's so
Should
annoying.
Okay, should everything be on the exact same damage curve? So if you're like, oh, I'm destroying all these, and then I will always expect everything to die equally. Isn't that
No,
boring?
no, they shouldn't. That's not the problem I'm bringing up. The beach boss that you click away should not drop the same as suddenly an Awakener level of fight. I don't have a problem with them being there. I have a problem with that I get a fucking rare leather glove. I have a
Wait, what's
problem. There's no incentive. There's no reason to do it. There's a zero reason to do it.
Oh, you're talking drop chances.
Yeah,
Right.
it doesn't do anything. There's just I don't mind them being there. I like hard fights. I would love harder fights like Grave Throw, Bramble Valley, but you shouldn't. They should be. You should be more incentivized to farm those. You should be like, well, beach. Yeah, it's easy for map
Well,
completion and doing it, but like I really want to farm Bramble Valley. Bramble Valley drops this, has a higher chance of this. There's just no reason
right.
to do it. It's so weird.
I mean, certain builds have easier times doing some of those bosses than others, right? And so yes, I agree. I don't know if it's like, I don't know if just because we struggle with certain bosses on hardcore, they necessarily need to drop. I think there should just be more variety in what bosses drop in general.
Sure.
And it doesn't have. I don't think that power always needs to line up entirely with reward, or like difficulty. I think opportunity, I think some things can have like a low drop chance but be very easy to do and just be like, yay, it's like kind of a freebie, and that's nice.
Yeah, but for me, there needs to be a difference. Like, they should not be the same. They should not be the same. That's very important to me. Because then, the way I approach it, with Bramble Valley, with Foundry, and all of those new maps, all I was seeing in my chat was people, like, when I would find a Foundry, chat would just go, like, kick W, don't do that, Ziz. And then I would, like, look up someone doing it, and I'm like, that guy just got one hit with no damage mods. Fuck that. So what I would do instead was I would find an Eradicator, which is supposed to be an endgame boss, by the way. It's supposed to be something really difficult. And I would Horizon Orb that until it gave me Foundry. And then be like, see ya, fucker! Because now he just gets one hit by the Elder, and I still get completion, and all I have to do is an easy endgame boss. Which is... Why is an endgame boss, like 20 times easier than a normal map boss? With like that's the problem I have, right? That's the problem I have.
I mean, it's a T16, or isn't it, Foundry?
Yeah.
One of the hardest ones.
It goes between 14 to 16, but like that should, under no circumstance, it should. I don't mind that it's harder than an Elder Guardian, but then it should again not drop me a rare leather glove with a 0% chance of dropping me anything good.
I mean, you can say the same thing about unique bosses as well. If it's not in the meta, then the unique has no value either.
That's different. There needs to be a purpose. Those still have a purpose. Like sometimes they're used, sometimes people want them.
Fragments, sure.
Yeah, it just needs to have a purpose. It literally does not have a purpose. It really annoys me when something that is so dangerous has no purpose or incentive to do.
Sure.
And that's like the biggest problem for me.
Sure. No, I get behind that.
I hate bad balance. Tilts me. And the fact that it was like I felt like nearly every new map was like that, and it just gave me and they're like, oh, this is
Yeah.
like PoE 2 maps, and I'm like, oh fuck, I am not excited for PoE 2 after seeing these maps. Are you fucking kidding me? I don't like any of the new maps. Some of them are bearable, but like I don't like any of the new ones. I like literally all my excitement for PoE 2 out the fucking door, dude.
I think there's a lot of it being learning the fight as well, though. Like learning the different like what is dangerous, what's not. Because there's like, I think sometimes we forget some of the other bosses as well, being like that we've figured out and are just easy for us now, but will murder other people.
Right.
Like laboratory, super easy fight. It's like really whatever. If you're a new player, that can screw you up.
I would say it's a hard fight, but like depends how you're looking at it, right? Everything you've done a lot is easy.
Yeah, exactly. But that's my point, right?
I mean, I
Like
feel the
it
same way
is
about
a
lab though. Like again, like the
sure.
harder the boss is, the more and different drops it should have. Div cards is a good thing
But
to
I
approach
don't.
this with.
Yes, like div cards are good there, and it would be cool if certain. But the thing is like you can never have perfect balance on like boss difficulty versus reward. But I do agree that there should be more reward.
Yeah.
But in the sense that it's like, because you can't just put like you can't just have them all. Oh, this is harder, therefore you always get 3 chaos. It would have to be something like I would like these very difficult fights to have something unique to them that they can drop, so you can
Yeah.
opt into them.
Like
It doesn't
I
have
agree.
to
I
be something
agree.
that you right.
The way they've done with the warband bosses is great. Lighthouse, you can
Yes.
farm Red Blade Banner. I want more of that. It doesn't matter if I have to kill
Yes.
it 100 times, but I can farm that. So maybe there's a fuck. Just as a random example, what if the Ul Natal shield can drop from the Foundry boss, right? Like bosses
Yes.
having like not like don't take away the Ul Natal shield as an Ul Natal drop, just like change it.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Add more things
No,
that
it's
you
because
want.
it's something you would like. Yeah.
Like bosses should be a thing you want to target farm. Like
Yeah. I
for
agree.
example, like I love that about Chevron, right? I want to farm
Mm-hmm.
Scriptorium Chevron and I can
Mm-hmm.
farm a Shavs that way. More things like that. Like then I get excited for finding a Scriptorium.
Yes.
I want to get excited for finding a Foundry. I want to get excited for finding a Bramble Valley. I don't want to feel like, oh my god, imagine if every map in PoE 2 is like Grave Tro. I will uninstall the fucking game.
God.
There's some of the
Stupid map.
new maps that are just awful. Like there's
I just can't find the boss in that map.
there's so much backtracking. I can't find the fucking boss. And just, oh, dude, I hate it. I hate the new maps. I love Gorge. I love Strand, and I think that's like part of PoE problems as well, because I would love at least a patch where you are more. I would like love to be more incentivized to do Grave Throw, like because you should be that much more incentivized to do something with a bad layout. Like maybe there are some things that only drop there. That would be fine with me. But right now, when it's just objectively worse, pound for pound, then I'm just annoyed. Like there's no fucking reason.
But I think an important thing here, rather than like pushing for every, I think it's important to understand where the crux of the issue lies. Is it that you just like that the maps are better, or is it something more fundamental to? Is it just because our movement skills suck?
It's just that there are no differences. So
But like why is a foundry map, or why is a labyrinth or a core map, like why are they inherently worse than Strand?
Sure.
Because they don't exist on a straight line.
It's because clear speed is a multiplier for quantity.
Exactly.
And that there are no other difference. It wouldn't matter if there were only things you could get in Foundry or only things you can get in Grave Throw, because then yeah, I can farm basic currencies in Strand. But what if Cells had something that it only drops? Like for example, it does have the Chevron's wrapping card, right? That's really good. And it has more monsters. Now I'm feeling more incentivized to do that. So I don't know. It's very badly balanced there. Yeah, I think Cells is really good. If it didn't have doors, Cells would be probably my third favorite map or something. Dungeon is awful. Cells is
I do
like
think a lot of
insane
this would
density.
feel a lot better if movement skills didn't get stuck on like every corner. Because I think a lot of the maps that people hate are things where, and it goes the same thing for Grave Trough, because like you can't really jump up and down the ledges. It gets really annoying,
Yeah.
like going up and down those things. And so it's like, I think that speaks a lot to whether or not we like a layout or a map, or whether or not we are quote unquote incentivized to do it, is whether or not it has XP. So I mean, I do think it's fine, like if they want to design around, well, this map inherently does not give as much XP as others because we've designed it that way, but then there has to be some other thing. Like every single map should be like, there should be like, what are we giving players here, or what are we taking away from them, and what do we add instead?
Yep. True.
I agree with that.
Yep. Right. We can end it on that question, I think.
Yeah.
This is gonna be a long YouTube VOD, I just realized.
Oh. Yeah, we went a little bit free flow there in the end.
Yeah, it was good though. I like that. I like our discussions. Either way, Nugi, thank you so much for joining us here for a Q&A and answering questions about people. I loved how we started off with defense. So you've got to build defense.
Yeah, it was great.
Nugi, where can people find more of you?
Of me, Nugian anywhere, basically.
Nice.
Twitch, Twitter, YouTube,
Instagram?
Google, Instagram. Well, I actually do have an... No, I think... Wait, where am I on Instagram? It's like... either real Nugi or I don't know, something. There's a link somewhere on my channel. You can click it. I don't remember it. There's like 3 pictures. It's great.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining. Let's get a clap for Nugi. Make sure you follow, like, and subscribe him on everything. Thank you so much, dude. My name is Zizaran, and if you like the video, subscribe. But more importantly, try to die less than I do.